Oh, what a time indeed to be Ben Houchen. After all, you are technically the only Tory with any real power left. And this has left Ben Houchen with a massive, massive influence on the Tory party. Remember, not that too long ago, when it really looked like that the Tory party leadership contest was gonna get really, really muddy, really brutal when there'd been a dossier, of course, released about Kimmy Badenoch, and Kimmy Badenoch had then fired back against Robert Jenrick, who she thought had released it, and things were getting a bit very tense at that time. Out comes, of course, Ben Houchen, probably now poor Tory Pope, Pope Tory, comes out and goes, "My children, halt, halt, cease and desist on your transgressions. Do not attack thine fellow Tory. Have instead a leadership contest based on peace and pure boringness." And I've said before, I do apologize. I thought the Tory leadership contest was going to get a lot more spicy than it was. But it didn't turn out that way. Instead, they've elected Kimmy Badenoch, and well, there they go on that journey. And don't worry, we'll be probably covering at some point when she inevitably fails and the infighting starts, and it will all start when she starts to define policy. However, Ben Houchen has once again come out and said, in the wake of this Tory, this Tory now confusion about looking at Trump, what lessons should they learn from Trump? He has now come out and said that they mustn't learn the wrong lessons. And this is kind of interesting because he comes back and gives a very, very odd take as to what he thinks they should actually learn and shouldn't learn. And bear in mind, you have to remember the only reason Ben Houchen has survived as long as he has, as long as he got his Freeport up and running, which, bear in mind, has been the cornerstone of every single one of his election campaigns. However, the people of Teesside are growing less and less patient with that Freeport, and of course, the promised benefits, but there aren't going to be any benefits. We know what happens at these places. Like I say, go watch one of my many videos I've made on the Freeport, or the ongoing disaster, of course, on the Teesside Freeport. Like I say, they're all there for you to go watch. But it is very, very clear the people of Teesside are losing their patience. Where once, he was proclaiming this to be the new Tory North Korea, the recent election pretty much shattered that idea that was something that was going to come to pass. So he is once again trying to exert his influence, trying to warn his fellow Tories, please don't learn the wrong lessons from Donald Trump, because otherwise, I don't think we're going to win. So let's see what Ben Houchen is talking about this time, and some of his bizarre takes he has on recent elections. But of course, before we do get into that, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button down below. There are links to my Patreon page, the one foundation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, thank you very much to all the people who do help and support the channel that way. So let us crack on into Conservative Home, because again, it's the only place he writes. And of course, Ben Houchen. The Conservatives must not learn the wrong lessons from Trump. And of course, I think we mentioned this before, Ben Houchen now has his own podcast. How he finds the time not only to run pretty much the Tees Valley Freeport Committee, be mayor of the region, and of course run a political podcast all at the same time. My Ben Houchen, what a busy boy you indeed are. So, as you would expect, he begins, the media has been full of hot takes from the recent US election, which saw Donald Trump sweep to victory. It would be very naive to suggest that there wasn't some critical lessons the Conservative Party must take from what has happened across the Atlantic. Now, many commentators would make the very obvious leap that we must move to the right and find an insurgent populist figure to take command of our party. But that is not what the US election tells us. Um, again, Ben Houchen, very, 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 very much so a what would be described as a one nation Tory, very centrist in his views, doesn't want the party to lean into that right wing populist view. As partly again why he's writing this. So, as of course we look to renew our offer as a party to the country, we should not try to emulate Trump. His is, of course, a one-off, an enigma who is authentic to himself, for good or for ill. Just as here in the UK, Boris Johnson was a unique character who we found cannot be copied and pasted for electoral success. And here's the thing: Boris Johnson won that election under some very, very unique circumstances. I do not think if the Boris Brigade had got their wish and somehow Boris Johnson had managed to survive, again, I don't think he would have, because you'd still have had the ethics committee to deal with. He would have had all the COVID stuff as well to deal with. Do you think he would have done well at the 2024 general election? Absolutely not. If Johnson had somehow survived, his electoral success and magic would have been destroyed completely. So, Ben continues. So, the left often falsely compares the two men simply because they don't like them. we falsely compare the two men. Really? Really? No, there are plenty of reasons you can call like Boris Johnson the UK's Trump. While they are not 100% compatible with each other, and yes, they do have some differences in their beliefs. No, there are a couple of things you can definitely say about them. The fact that they lie more often than they tell the truth. Their ability to tell good convincing stories, although Trump's, as we saw in the last general election, has slipped quite considerably. There are some very, very obvious similarities between them, but I think it is largely fair to sort of compare them. So, they are both populists in what they spun and what they were at the time. They are both on that. But Ben continues. So, if you want to choose to analyze their politics, the similarities do stop at their usual hair. The policy positions are usually at opposite ends of the conservative spectrum. Johnson is a big state social liberal Tory, and Trump is a nose-hard social conservative with a protectionist outlook on the economy. But they are both winners. Yeah. Johnson would change wherever he wanted to. Johnson is incredibly malleable. So is Trump. Trump will change from being hard-nosed to soft-nosed, whatever the political winds may tell him at that time. If his crowd cheers for him being soft-nosed, he will go soft-nosed. If he wants the crowd cheers for him to be hard-nosed, he will go hard-nosed conservative. So, but they are, of course, both winners. But what can be compared is, of course, their ability to reach these left-behind areas of the countries that they represent. Both are, of course, of the elite, but have railed against it in office and, importantly, took millions of people on this journey with them. Again, this is where the similarity comes with. Why did they take all these people? Both Trump and Johnson promised things that they would do in government for all these left-behind people. Johnson did not deliver. Neither did Trump when he was president. He's not going to deliver this time for them. And yet, people, again, swept up in this. It does at least seem that the Johnson, stuff did not rub off on the UK public, or at least the UK voting public, as much as Trump did. Hence why he still has that, that whole MAGA cult that he kept going. But again, it just goes to show you the difference between, the UK voting public and the US voting public on this. So it did not matter, of course, to the people in Redcar that Johnson was an old Etonian, or to the citizens of Oklahoma that the president-elect is a billionaire, because they made their entire mission in government to speak to them directly and deliver the things that they were asking for. Yeah, deliver the things that they were asking for. Did Johnson deliver the things they were asking for? Absolutely not. They listened to those who felt they were being ignored by the establishment, and those people felt heard. We cannot pretend that as a party that will find another Johnson. We won't. But what we can do is, of course, take forward and develop the leveling up agenda that allowed millions of people to vote Conservative for the first time. This message resonated with people and offered them a better tomorrow. And yet, when you were in power, did you follow through and complete that leveling up agenda? No. Like, the Conservative Party did not follow through on that leveling up agenda, which also, bear in mind, was what Ben Houchen was elected on as well. The leveling up agenda failed because the Conservatives, when it came time to deliver, did not care. So you must ask these people time and time again that if the Conservatives came back with, oh, this is leveling up too, you didn't even level up the first time. Why should the voting public believe you on leveling up 2 or leveling up 0.2? So it told them that they mattered, and shockingly, it was immensely popular and has played a huge role in my own electoral success in Teesside, a huge beneficiary of Johnson's vision, which was now based on the simple truth that talent is spread equally throughout the country, yet opportunity is not. So what's that? What's that leveling up? What's that he's referring to? Well, of course, it's the Teesside Freeport. That has been constantly throughout his entire election campaigns that Ben Houchen has run is the Teesside Freeport. Nothing else. It has been that and that alone. And yet even the people of Teesside are now becoming, less and less certain that this Freeport is going to have, shall we say, the economic payoff that Houchen has been promising. So, back to this. And it chimes, of course, with what I believe is now the single most important lesson we must learn from what we saw also across the pond. People voted with their wallets. They voted with their families, their interests in their hearts. They voted for economic independence and security. Again, economic independence from what exactly? What does that mean to someone like Ben Houchen when he says economic independence? Security. Security of what? Security, job security, food security, economic security, home security. Throwing out buzzwords here. So most people don't read columns like this. Unfortunately, I do, Ben. So good luck for this. And of course, they do not care for what is said on the most of the floor of the House of Commons, or what is, of course, the morning gossip in Politico is. Most people want to get on with their lives with the knowledge that they can provide with their families, enjoy a few luxuries, and realistic hope that they can continue to become better off in the future. Did your party do that over the past 14 years? No, absolutely not. Pure and simple. You've had 14 years in power. The UK is far worse off than it was when the Tories took over. So, over the past couple of months, the Conservative Party has done a hell of a lot of talking, but has very little demonstrated to me that we actually truly understand this message. So, this is, of course, Ben Houchen probably actually openly acknowledging that the Conservative Party has learned nothing. Because they haven't. I've said this multiple times. The Conservative Party has not had a deep introspective look at why they lost. Were their policies correct? Was that a lot of their ideology that they pursued good? Leveling up. Was it actually, while it may have been, quote, good with the public, what did it actually deliver in the long term? You know? But it's been talking very little to demonstrate they understood the message, and of course that we are very least moving towards an offer that has economic security and that people are, of course, at the heart of it. The government is too big. It has a view on everything. Offering solutions, it has very little ability to deliver. So the government, again, too big. So once again, message to Ben Houchen, what is it the government should stop doing? Because I think then you might get quite a monumental pushback, because it's very clear here, oh, government too big? Well, okay, what should the government no longer do then? And why should the government no longer do that? Because if something like in the area of regulations, then who is the referee in that area? If it's the government is no longer or should provide a certain type of service, then what should fill that gap? So a conservative government must get back to basics. Understringed by the nose of understringed by the noise of pressure groups and protest. It must speak to the country again. It must come up with a plan to make people richer and more optimistic about the future. That is the top and bottom of things. And yet, saying the government is too big, wanting to strip away some of these things that people really care about, like the NHS, you know, not going to go down well. Not going to go down well. The traditional party ties have gone. Politics in today's world is now far more transactional, and most people would not even consider themselves on the left or the right. They vote, they vote, of course, the complete delivery of a plan based on aspiration and economic success. And that is the solution that should inform our position as a party. Not the ideological debates of the past, but a serious plan to improve people's everyday lives and for people people to be heard. And here's the thing: is your free port going to enable this? No, it's not. We know economically what happens with free ports. We've seen every study. We've seen what happens to all these free ports. There is huge questions that should be asked about the own running and the stuff going on in this free port at the moment. I think the people of Teesside deserve to know what's going on here. Has there been, some corruption? Probably should be, looking into this. But yeah, it is, I think, a disaster that Ben Houchen has now come out and said this, because he has actually come out and said the one thing the Conservatives do not want to admit, which is this section here. Now, over the past couple of months, the Conservative Party has done a hell of a lot of talking, but has demonstrated little to me that we have truly understood this message. Bear in mind, you've said the government is too big. Boris Johnson, you claimed at the start of this was, where is he? So Johnson is a big state, socially liberal Tory. Big state. Now, the very thing that people actually like. You've just said, "Oh, we need to move. Government's too big." That implicitly targets you saying you want a smaller state. Again, Ben Houchen at opposite ends, saying, "Well, we should do this, but I really want to." uh, uh, Ben Houchen, I think, is going to be in a lot of trouble. I think in a couple of years' time. Definitely a lot of trouble. Let's see if there's any good stuff. Yeah. Yeah, truly. Houchen lost his yearly billion dished out by Sunak. Ken, that's true. um, Yeah, someone says it. Someone actually calls him out here. Ben, I think you've given far too much credit to the Conservative Party levelling up agenda for your success, and too little to yourself. I do live in the Tees Valley and voted for you despite being a conservative. My social circle and extended family voted for you because you came into the job with a set of promises, and you have sort of mainly kept. Again, mainly it has been that Freeport. Everything has been based on that Freeport. You are perceived to be an honourable person in touch with the needs and aspirations of your electorate. In fact, you are a conservative is now more of a cross to bear at this moment rather than a feather in your cap. I think that says a lot. That really does say a lot here, because what have his promises been? Oh, I'll do the Freeport. So all Ben Houchen has to do is a couple of times a year say, look at the progress I'm making on this Freeport. Look at the progress I'm making on this Freeport. You know, I'm delivering for you. Has he been involved heavily in Westminster politics for the past couple of years? No. He's kept his nose out of it. But now, all of a sudden, Ben Houchen getting involved in politics because he knows he's the only Tory in power. He knows his voice carries a big weight. Every single Tory went to him to try and get an endorsement. He didn't endorse anyone, which says to me, I think he has plans. I think he has plans to one day retire from this Teesside role, get a seat in the area based off of that, run for an MP in one of these seats, and then get into the party, start his own, faction. He's probably already got quite a considerable faction indeed, and then make himself the leader. I think Ben Houchen absolutely has that idea. I think that is the direction he really, really, really is going to go for this. It's inevitable because he seems to be setting himself up as like this figure of influence and power, and it's very, very clear. Even his Blueprint podcast is just. I'm talking with some very influential conservatives about what we could do, and they're speaking to me knowing that my voice carries a lot of weight now in the Conservative Party. Didn't used to, but now the electoral landscape has changed. All of a sudden, Ben Houchen carries quite a big voice. Now, I do think he will make the move eventually. Who knows? But I think he's waiting for that Freeport to be finished. I think he wants to go, oh, look, Freeport finished, and then leave. Because he doesn't want to stick around for the consequences. He doesn't want to, hear about all the other stuff that's probably going to go with it. Because then he can turn around and say, oh, well, look, they're messing up my Freeport. Or blame it on, either the Labour or Conservative or whoever happens to sort of win his seat, saying, oh, see, if I was in charge, this would never have happened. So, yeah, I do expect Ben Houchen, in some way, shape, or form, to enter into the Westminster ring sooner or later. And when he does, he'll make a go for the leadership. Absolutely, he'll make a go for the leadership. So let me know what you think down below. But yeah, Ben Houchen's lessons to the Conservatives. Please just ignore everything else and just focus on the economy. Just focus on that small state economy that I want. But the public doesn't want a small state economy. They want a big state economy. That's why every single Conservative has to say, government's too big. Okay, if the government's too big, what should we do about it then? Silence. Silence. And this is why I wish journalists, people on panelist shows, whenever a Conservative said that, you should challenge them on that. What do they mean by saying that? Okay, the government is too big. Okay, what should be done about it then? And if they say, oh, well, we should reduce the size of the government, okay, what should the government no longer do then? It's a conversation they do not want to have because they know how popular that is, even amongst their own voting bloc. So the Conservative Party, their ideology is way off of what their own voter base actually even wants. But there you go. So as always, thank you very much for watching, and of course, we'll see you all next time.